Hello and welcome to the Blue Pencil Session. This is where we take a look at some of the opening pages of your manuscript and give you our thoughts. I'm excited because today we have the chance to take a look at a mystery. And you know, there's nothing I like quite like a mystery. So I'm going to have us start with Donna. If you can give us some of your thoughts about whether or not this opening worked for you.
All right. Yes, I love a mystery too, and blood, even though it makes me cringe. So I was, let's see, I hate that I'm starting on a bump, but I'm going to start on a bump, which is a little bit on the order of sentences at the very, very beginning. So we learn that Matt's seeing blood, so that's interesting, that's great. And we learn that Matt is an ex-cop. Something more sinister has happened. He hated when he was right, and then we found out what it was that Matt was seeing. And it just felt to me like the he hated when he was right came too early. We should see what he sees and then have his reaction to it. That was something that kind of made me stop. There was, and the other thing, so I really love the visuals that are here, but I got stopped a little bit on the telling. So the describing about who Matt is. It felt like there was a bit too much of learning and hearing a couple of times that he's a former cop. And I loved when he reported to the 911 that it was a 1023 or a whatever the code is that a cop would use, a 1032. That to me was a really interesting way to learn that he was, well, and he's also said detective and then he corrects himself. That's way more interesting to me to learn that what his past was rather than at the beginning being told that he was a cop. So that's just my one little thing. It's a really interesting setup, but if looking to improve for me to love it, that's what I would do.
How about you, Crystal? Can you speak to some of the things that popped for you?
Yeah, so really enjoying it overall. I definitely am intrigued to find out what's going on. I instantly had questions around blood trails. I have a slightly morbid fascination with blood splatter and things like that, and I've watched way too much CSI and took way too many criminology classes. So that's definitely sort of an area for me. And I always try to just picture whatever might have happened. So I'll circle back around to that in a second. But a couple things jumped out. There was 2 points. Like at the beginning, you say there was like a man, you sort of identify him immediately as a man. That is the body. And then later you say again, once he got closer, he could tell that it was a man who was lying there. And so I think just reducing the redundancy there and just leave it as a body in the beginning and kind of keep that little bit of extra suspense. And then, so I had questions, okay, if he's been out there long enough that the body is cold, like blood, it's not gonna freeze super quickly because it's going to be warm, at least at the time. But it says the tracks of blood, like the spatter in the beginning, you refer to it as being super faint. So like, has it been there long enough that it's kind of washing away, or, has it frozen and changed consistency? Like, what is it about that changed? And so when he sticks his hand in to check the guy's pulse and it comes away smeared with blood, he should have felt that something was off. If you go to take somebody's pulse and there's wet blood there, it's kind of slidey a little bit, or it's sticky if the blood has been around for a while, right? So there's some texture stuff there that should have given him a little hint that something was off before he actually pulls it back and sees it. And I also had questions like, okay, he just wiped his hands. He just wiped the blood off his hands. Did he wipe it on his clothes? Did he wipe it in the snow after being so careful not to want to like contaminate the scene? Did he have a handkerchief in his pocket or something? Like, so I was sort of immediately curious about that. And maybe that's a bit of a clue for later, and that's going to cause some problems for him to have this guy's blood on his jacket or whatever when the cops actually show up. And so that's all good. If there's a plot reason for that, then that's all good. But I also had a question around the beginning with the drops of blood that kind of lead towards the body. If you've slit somebody's throat and then moved them there, that's going to be like a bit more of a slidey trail, perhaps. And perhaps the volume might be a little bit more than just a few drops. So anyway, I'm curious. I'm sure there's a reason for that. But just those were sort of some things that immediately popped into my twisted little brain. But yeah, super curious. I think you did a really good job of kind of weaving the details in and grabbing attention.
So I love watching Donna's face while we talk about blood trails and stickiness.
You know, it's a funny thing because as Crystal was talking, I was thinking, oh, those would be really great details to add into the story. And I'm like, well, I don't want to read details like that, but I do want to read details like that.
I totally want to read details like that. I just want to say, I think it's a great setup for a mystery, and it's a tried and true setup, but it's never a bad one, which is there's an ex-cop who's going to find himself pulled back into needing to solve a mystery. So I like that there is that kind of setup, and, you know, a cop who's, you know, hopefully probably wishing he's left all this behind him. And of course, you know, his misfortune, he's stumbled across a body. So I love the setup of that. I certainly think it's a strong opening to start with, you know, blood on a snow. Like, that's a very strong image. I did have questions around it because he talks about the blood trail is so faint. And some of this connects with what, you know, Crystal was talking about, particularly because if you go down a line or two, it's like the terrain here is too flat for an impact to draw this much blood. So you're saying there's this much blood, but up ahead, you're saying the blood trail is really faint. So I just need a little bit more clarity as to which way that it is. And I think there's a couple places where you can tighten. So you have a line like, had someone gotten hurt, the result of a collision, question mark. I don't think you need the line about collision. It's just enough to have this question, has somebody been hurt? Particularly because you're having this line, which does introduce it. The ex-cop and him tells him something more sinister has happened. So that, I think, is a nice emotional beat and has that come in. Also, you have the line where he's, you know, kind of walking up to the body. He's being very careful about not wanting to contaminate the scene. And again, I think that's really great because that's an instinct for him. That's the way he sees the world, and setting up setting and how characters interact in a setting tells us so much about him. I love that there is a little bit of a hint that he has a daughter, and there's some issues there because, again, a lot of fun and mysteries is also the detectives failing. So I like that there's just the brief introduction of that. And Crystal had pointed this out initially, and I'm just going to echo it. At the very end, you have the line, too blunt, not everyone's seen a dead man. And then you have a paragraph, Matt, on the other hand, had seen his share, 15 years with the Canadian Security Intelligence Agency, 10 more with major homicide. That's actually a weaker paragraph, ending on the idea of not everyone's seen a dead man and not giving us all of these details of his past history, I think would be stronger. There will be times later to sort of, you know, possibly when he's being introduced by the cops, somebody saying something, well, why did you do this? Well, you know, I had 10 with homicide and 10 before this, like in a dialogue as a way to kind of get that information out. And otherwise allows you to end on maybe a little bit stronger of a note. So that's something that I would keep in mind. But a great setup for a mystery, and may there be more bodies, at least on the page. And for everybody else, we would love to see the starts of your stories. So please send them into the Blue Pencil sessions. And until then, we'll see you guys around the Academy. Take care.
Bye.